Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into some really fascinating stuff today. We're tackling the African Digital Compact,
Oh, yeah,
this roadmap, basically, to Africa's digital future.
absolutely. And it really is fascinating. I mean, it goes way beyond just the technology itself.
Yeah.
It's like a plan to use all these digital tools to tackle some of the world's, biggest problems.
Yeah.
Right from the heart of Africa.
So it's like Africa's plan to not just catch up digitally, but like to kind of leapfrog ahead and become a global leader in this space.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's really exciting. I have to admit, though, when you sent me this document, I was a little intimidated.
Yeah.
It's huge. How do we even begin to break down something this complex?
Well, first, it's important to understand that this document really is all about aligning, Africa's digital goals with global initiatives, right? So like the UN's Global Digital Compact and the African Union's Agenda 2063. And it does that by focusing on 10 strategic pillars, each one targeting like a specific area of digital development.
10 pillars. Wow, okay, we're definitely going to need to pick and choose which ones we kind of delve into today.
Yeah.
But before we get there, can you just kind of like set the stage a little bit? What's the digital landscape currently like in Africa? What are like some of the key challenges that this document is trying to address?
Well, imagine this, a continent that is just brimming with potential, but facing all these hurdles, like limited internet access, especially in, rural communities,
Right.
inadequate infrastructure, and then a significant digital skills gap.
Yeah.
These are real roadblocks, and the document acknowledges that.
So it's not shying away from like the real problems. That's good.
Not at all.
I feel like a lot of these big policy documents tend to just kind of gloss over like the hard stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just focus on the, the really exciting, optimistic stuff.
And on top of those, right, there's like the concerns about cybersecurity threats in this increasingly connected world, worries about the impact of automation on jobs, and then just the need to ensure data sovereignty
Right.
in this global digital economy. I mean, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it sounds pretty daunting. I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed.
Right.
We haven't even got into the 10 pillars yet.
But that's where the optimism kicks in. This document, it doesn't just lay out the problems.
Okay.
It also proposes, solutions. And it does so by highlighting the incredible opportunities that all this digital technology presents for Africa.
Okay. Give me some hope here.
Yeah.
What kind of opportunities are we talking about?
So think about the potential of mobile connectivity.
Mhm.
I mean, this is exploding across Africa.
Yeah.
We're seeing a surge in digital entrepreneurship and then the potential for e-governance to totally transform how services are delivered.
Yeah.
This is massive. I mean, we're not talking just like incremental improvements. We're talking about like real game changers.
So it's about using technology to kind of like leapfrog over traditional development hurdles. What does that actually look like in practice? Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. So imagine, rural communities that lack access to traditional banking suddenly being connected through mobile banking.
Right.
Or, farmers using AI-powered drones to monitor their crops and optimize irrigation. This is about, using technology to bypass the limitations of like existing systems and really accelerate progress.
So it's not about catching up. It's about forging a new path, one that could even see, Africa taking the lead in certain areas.
Yeah, precisely. And that's what makes this document so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about, following in someone else's footsteps.
Right.
This is about blazing a new trail.
Yeah, I'm starting to get the picture. So we have the challenges, the opportunities, and then these 10 pillars as kind of the framework for action.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we even start?
Well, I mean, each pillar is packed with like specific objectives and initiatives.
Yeah.
It's possible to cover, everything. But maybe we could start with a few that might particularly resonate with you.
Okay.
Would you like to hear about how the compact tackles the issue of affordable access?
Absolutely. I mean, that seems like a really fundamental issue.
Yeah.
If people can't even get online.
Right.
All the other pillars won't matter much, right? Tell me more about how the compact plans to make internet access more affordable and accessible across the continent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Affordable access, it really is the foundation. And the compact tackles this head on with Pillar 1, which focuses on making that internet access and digital tech in general more affordable all across the continent.
So what's the game plan there? Are we talking government subsidies, investment incentives, or is there something else entirely?
It's a multi-pronged approach, really. The document calls for policies that encourage investment in broadband infrastructure, especially in those underserved rural areas we were talking about. Imagine, like, this network of high-speed internet connections reaching even the most remote villages.
That would be amazing, but also, wouldn't laying down all that infrastructure be incredibly expensive? Like, how do they make that financially viable?
Yeah, that's where innovative financing mechanisms come in. The compact, it really encourages exploring options like, digital bonds and blended finance models, even leveraging crowdfunding platforms to really tap into that desire for connectivity at like the grassroots level.
So it's about thinking outside the box, finding new ways to fund these essential infrastructure projects. But infrastructure is just one part of the equation, right? What about the cost of devices and data plans? Those can be really prohibitive for a lot of people.
Absolutely. You hit another crucial point there. Pillar 1 also emphasizes driving down the cost of devices and data plans, which could involve, tax breaks for manufacturers, promoting more competition among providers, and encouraging the development of low-cost, like locally manufactured devices tailored to the African market.
Okay, so it's about creating a whole ecosystem where digital technology is not just available, but it's truly affordable and accessible to everyone. But even with that affordable access, there's still the issue of digital literacy. What good is a smartphone if you don't know how to use it effectively?
That is so true, and that's where Pillar 7 comes into play, enhancement of digital skills and literacy. This pillar is all about empowering people with the skills they need to thrive in this increasingly digital world.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit. What kind of skills are we talking about here? Is it basic computer literacy or something more advanced?
It's both. We need to ensure that, like basic computer literacy, of course, but the compact goes further. It highlights the importance of, like, those advanced digital skills. Think coding, data analytics, even cybersecurity. These are the skills that will drive innovation and create, higher paying jobs, making Africa competitive on, like, a global scale.
So it's about equipping people not just to be consumers of this digital technology, but like creators and innovators themselves.
Exactly. The vision is for Africa to become this hub for tech talent, with a workforce that's capable of developing its own solutions, launching their own startups, shaping their own digital destiny.
That's amazing. So how do we get there? What are the specific initiatives laid out in Pillar 7?
Well, the compact calls for integrating digital skills into the education systems at all levels, from primary schools all the way to universities. Imagine a curriculum where coding is taught right alongside math and science, preparing students for, those jobs of the future. It also emphasizes like lifelong learning and upskilling opportunities for the existing workforce, recognizing that the need to adapt and acquire new skills it's constant in this digital age.
Yeah, it sounds like a really comprehensive approach, but also like a massive undertaking. It's going to take a lot of coordination and resources to make all of that happen.
Absolutely. And that's why the document emphasizes this multi-stakeholder approach. It involves not just governments, but also the private sector, civil society, and international organizations. Everyone has a role to play in building this digital future.
Speaking of the private sector, one thing that struck me when I was reading the document was this concept of digital public goods. Can you explain what those are and how they fit into this vision?
Yeah, so digital public goods are essentially open source digital resources that are available to everyone. You can kind of think of them like, digital commons.
Okay.
Things like open educational resources, public health data platforms, or, open source software tools.
So it's about leveraging digital technology to create resources that benefit everyone, not just, those who can afford to pay for them.
Exactly. And the Contact sees digital public goods as playing like a key role in achieving those UN Sustainable Development Goals. For example, imagine a free open source platform that gives farmers like real-time weather data, crop prices, agricultural best practices. I mean, this kind of resource, it could dramatically improve food security and livelihoods across the entire continent.
That's a great example. It really highlights the potential of digital technology to drive that kind of positive change, especially in those really crucial areas, agriculture, healthcare, education. But let's be realistic, all this increased connectivity also brings increased risks. Cybersecurity is a huge concern in, our increasingly digital world. So how does the compact address that?
You've raised such a crucial point. As Africa becomes more digitally connected, it also becomes much more vulnerable to these cyber attacks, data breaches, online fraud. And that's why the document dedicates an entire pillar to cybersecurity, Pillar 6.
Okay, walk me through that. What are some of the key strategies that are outlined in this pillar?
It calls for Like a multi-layered approach, right? It starts with establishing, strong cybersecurity policies and regulations at the national level. Think like data protection laws, incident response frameworks, and regulations for critical infrastructures.
So it's about setting the rules of the road, basically, for the digital world.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just about, the rules. It's also about building the capacity to actually enforce them. So that means investing in cybersecurity infrastructure, training cybersecurity professionals, and then promoting more awareness about like online threats among the general public.
So it's about equipping everyone from, government agencies all the way down to individuals with the tools and knowledge they need to protect themselves in the digital world. That sounds like a pretty massive task.
It is a massive task, but
Yeah.
that's why the document really stresses the importance of international cooperation. Cyber attacks, they don't respect borders. So, a coordinated global response is really essential. The compact, it encourages African nations to collaborate with each other and with their international partners to share information, best practices, resources to combat cyber threats effectively.
So it's kind of like a global security network, everyone working together to keep the digital world safe?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting. The document argues that if Africa can address cybersecurity threats effectively, it can actually turn this challenge into a competitive advantage.
How so?
Well, think about it. If Africa is able to create a secure and trustworthy digital environment, it automatically becomes more attractive for investment, innovation, entrepreneurship.
Right.
It becomes a place where businesses and individuals feel confident that their data is protected
Yeah.
and that their transactions are secure. This could be like a major driver of economic growth and development.
So instead of seeing cybersecurity as this, burden, it's seen as an opportunity to create a digital ecosystem that's both secure and thriving.
Precisely. And that brings us back to this idea of leapfrogging. By embracing, cutting-edge cybersecurity technologies and best practices, Africa could potentially leapfrog over some of the security challenges that, more developed nations are still dealing with.
That's fascinating. It's like turning a potential weakness into a strength. But I have to admit, the more we talk about this document, the more I'm struck by just how ambitious it is. It seems almost too good to be true. Are there any potential pitfalls or challenges that the document itself acknowledges?
Yeah, it's ambitious, no doubt. But one of the things I really appreciate about this document is that it doesn't shy away from those potential challenges.
Right.
In fact, it dedicates a good chunk to addressing this whole issue of implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing to have a vision, but how do you actually turn this, ambitious blueprint into a reality?
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road. So how does the compact propose we go about that?
Well, that's where, this emphasis on a multi-stakeholder approach comes in.
Okay, we've touched on that before, but can you break that down a little bit more? Like, who are these stakeholders and how do they work together?
So it's about moving beyond just, like top-down government-led initiatives.
Right.
It's about creating a truly collaborative ecosystem where you're engaging the private sector, you've got civil society organizations, you've got academic institutions, you even have international partners.
Mm-hmm.
Each stakeholder, brings their own unique expertise, resources, perspectives to the table.
That makes sense. But how do you coordinate something on this scale? How do you make sure everyone is on the same page and working towards the same goals?
Well, the document actually proposes creating a dedicated platform for this kind of collaboration, the African Digital Cooperation Forum.
Okay.
So imagine like this space, both physical and virtual,
Right.
where all these different stakeholders can come together to, share ideas, coordinate initiatives, and really hold each other accountable.
That's a cool idea. It's like a pan-African brain trust, for the digital age. But even with all that collaboration, we still need to address the elephant in the room, which is funding.
Yeah.
All these ambitious goals, all this infrastructure development, all these training programs, it's going to take a lot of money.
You did it.
So where is all that funding going to come from?
You're absolutely right. Funding is critical.
Yeah.
The compact acknowledges this and calls for both, domestic and international investment.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just asking for money. It really emphasizes the need for these innovative financing mechanisms.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, so we're talking about exploring things like digital bonds, where investors are essentially, buying into the future growth of the digital economy.
Right.
There's also potential for blended finance models where public funds are used to, leverage private investment.
Yeah.
And then even crowdfunding platforms could play a role, kind of tapping into that desire for connectivity at like a grassroots level.
So it's about like tapping into a diverse range of funding sources and being creative in the ways that you come up with the financing,
Hmm.
not just relying on, traditional aid or government budgets.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note that the document really stresses, transparency and accountability
Right.
in managing those funds. So it calls for clear mechanisms to like track how that money is being spent
Yeah.
and to measure the impact of those investments.
So that you're making sure that the money is actually being used effectively and making a difference, not just disappearing into,
Right, exactly.
some black hole.
Yeah.
But funding is just one piece of that implementation puzzle. We also need like the right people to make all this happen.
Mhm.
Where are all those digital experts going to come from?
That's where capacity building comes in. So the compact, recognizes that we need to invest in training and education to really develop a workforce that's equipped with the skills and knowledge to like design, implement, manage these really complex digital initiatives.
So it's not about just importing that expertise from other parts of the world. It's about really cultivating that talent within Africa.
Yeah, exactly. And the document, it's very specific about, the types of skills that are needed. So we're not just talking about like, technical skills like coding and data analysis, but we're also talking about these softer skills like project management, leadership, policy development.
So it's about really building a whole new generation of African leaders
Yeah.
in the digital space.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. But I mean, with any ambitious plan, there's always the risk that, things might not go exactly as planned. How does the document kind of address this need for, maybe course correction and adaptation along the way?
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
Because this digital landscape, it's constantly evolving. So any implementation strategy have to be flexible and responsive, right? So the document emphasizes the importance of ongoing monitoring and evaluation.
Okay.
This isn't just a set it and forget it plan.
So it's about constantly tracking your progress, measuring the impact, and being willing to adapt as needed.
Exactly. So the document calls for the establishment of a really robust monitoring and evaluation framework to really track the progress towards those goals that are outlined in the compact. And it also stresses the need for like regular reviews and feedback mechanisms just to ensure that the strategy remains relevant and responsive to that changing digital landscape.
So it's a living document, basically. It's constantly evolving to keep pace with the digital world.
Yeah, very much so.
I have to say, the more we've unpacked this African Digital Compact, the more impressed I am with it. It's not just like a wish list.
Yeah.
It really feels like a thoughtful, comprehensive roadmap
It is.
for, true digital transformation, one that acknowledges the challenges, but also like really embraces those huge opportunities that lie ahead.
I couldn't agree more. And for me, one of the most compelling parts of this whole document is like the emphasis on that collaboration and partnership.
Yeah.
This isn't just about African nations, catching up with the rest of the world.
Right.
It's about them shaping a digital future that benefits everyone,
Right.
both within Africa and, globally.
It's a really, really powerful vision, and it's exciting to think about the role that Africa can play in shaping the future of the digital world. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of optimism and a lot to think about.
Me too.
So I really encourage all of you listening to check out the full document. We'll include some links in the show notes.
Yeah, great idea.
The African Digital Compact, it's more than just a document. It's like a call to action, an invitation to be part of something truly transformative. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.